And some said at the beginning part of the season that it's going to be an intriguing one because we'll be sharing more personal stories. I'll be sharing much more detailed story. My name is David, and I'm your guest. I am your host, rather. I almost felt like I was a guest for a minute. I'm your host on Real Conversations today, and with me I've got Handsome. Hi, Handsome.
Hello, David.
So we'll have David back in the house from season 2, and it's because David has got an interesting story to share with us today. And I'd like to say, welcome back on the show, David.
Thank you, David. Thank you, handsome.
I want to take us straight into the show because we have another guest right on this episode. So we're gonna be talking about two things on this episode, basically depression and addiction. So David's going to be taking the addiction part of the show, and then watch out for the next guest that will be on the later part of the show. And straight up to David. David used to be a retired drug addict.
Drug lord.
David, what's your story?
Damn, the story is so long. I doubt like 30 minutes got me, but
Tell us the critical part.
Well, I mean, just summarize it
where you
for
go
us
arrested
in 7
because you
minutes.
couldn't go.
I never got arrested for drug.
Okay,
Oh, that's good.
I never got arrested.
but how's the story? How did
He
it start?
saved me.
Go straight for it. We've got very limited time.
So,
Go straight for it.
the story is basically okay. Yeah, I was involved with a lot of drugs, except proper cocaine. But then I did crack cocaine, and to me, I feel like that's the most intense type. Because if you know about the American story, you can tell about
Yeah.
the crack pandemic. At some points, like people were leaving their kids, and so like people don't really pay attention. Trust me, like I don't think that this part of the world they pay attention to how much people's kids are involved with.
David,
especially
I need
crack.
your own story. I need to own it. I need your
It's
own
crazy.
story.
So okay, it was at this point in my life where I was depressed, and I didn't know what depression was, but somebody mentioned it to me, and then I started googling, and I realized, okay, this is the definition, and this is who I am right now. Like this is what I'm going through, and then during that period, I noticed something. I noticed that I was fighting to be more than what I was, but I didn't know who I wanted to be. And then I felt like making money would be like fill the void, and then I started selling weed. I sold,
You
I
sold.
sold weed. Yeah.
I told you.
Also, you were a retired drug lord. Now you
I
like
said
Jay-Z.
it.
So you're a retired
So-
drug lord.
So selling weed for me was like it was easy
You're like a plug.
because I was already
You always your knapsack.
I was already a popular student because socially, like my faculty in school, everywhere, everybody knew me. So like I was already a popular student. So like selling weed wasn't a big deal for me, yeah. Because, well, that's it. And then because of that, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put in work for this, and then I'll be a better person when I have enough money.
So you were selling and you were using.
Yeah, no. Then I wasn't even using. I was just smoking weed. Like,
Okay.
yeah. So, and the weed part wasn't addiction. It was more of lifestyle. Because weed helped me to reflect and retrospect. But this other part is the part that I feel like a lot of people don't understand, and that's the power of crack cocaine addiction. So I walked into some of my guys one day, like we all smoke weed together, but then I never knew they were indulging in some other stuff.
Yeah.
So I walked into them then, and I saw like these guys were high for like a minute. Nobody's talking to me. I'm wondering what's going on in this room. Like everybody's just quiet, but they just finished smoking something. You feel me? And then I'm like, what one? And then told me like, say if you take this heat, bro, you're gone. I'm like, okay. At that point, I really didn't feel any pressure because I'm depressed. But then I've started picking up because I was making enough money at that point in my life. So I was feeling like, okay, I'm back on my toes. Like,
Yep.
how much damage can this do to me? I didn't know it was crack cocaine. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that these niggas were hitting something.
Yeah.
You get? So I just hit it. And then, trust me, I felt more optimistic, more energized, more motivated than I've
I
ever
want to
felt.
push you a bit on that because so I know in the last few weeks, Anton has been saying so much about drug addicts. He's been preaching so much about depression and likes of it. Anton, at what point do you think what was going on was? He said it was depressed. So, do you think depression is enough reason for people to go into drugs? I'm gonna try that to Anton before you continue the story.
So when you're depressed, it's not about you don't need extra reason, right? Sometimes people try to discard that, well, it's not, they try to judge that it's not enough reason for you to go to make certain decisions, but you're not in their shoes. So it's difficult to say that it is good enough reason or not. What I know is that when people are in that state, they find what to either pour themselves out into or what to feed themselves with, and at that state they are the most vulnerable. So it's not, you can't unjustify it, if there's any word like that. You can't say, well, it's not a good enough reason.
Yeah.
Right? It's enough power to pull you or to push you. So depression has the power to either, it's the fact that when you're depressed, sometimes your ability to critically make decisions in terms of this is what is healthy for me, this is what is good enough for me, becomes blur.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just like saying to someone that is going through a rough patch, that is it okay for the person to go into eating unhealthy meals, right? That's how the person can cope at that time.
Process it, yeah.
Right? So it's more of a coping mechanism. Is it right? Can they do better? Maybe they can make better decisions, but if they don't have the help they need at that time, then they, as vulnerable as they are, they can make certain decisions that way.
Okay, David, was that how you felt? Was that a reflection of how you were feeling at that point in time?
Well, like, I didn't take the drug because I felt like it was going to make me feel some type of way. But at that point in my life, I was a broken man. So anything goes. So when I took that, he gave me that feeling, like I said, you have to really understand what you're getting into. Like,
Yeah.
he gave me that feeling that I'd never had.
How long did it last for?
3 minutes, 5 minutes tops.
The crack, yeah?
Yes, the highness. And trust me, you feel more optimistic than you have ever felt in your life. Trust me, I will start, most of the things I've never felt like I can never do, I will start starting myself. In fact, I will start telling my guys, I'll be like, yo, you know that thing we said we're going to do? We're going to do it.
Okay,
you
so
know,
I'm gonna
and
actually,
then I'll make the plans.
I'm gonna
and
actually
that's where it's going to stop.
I'm gonna,
5 minutes.
I'm gonna ask you very more personal questions now. So, the feeling you had when you had crack was the same feeling you had when you had Molly?
Molly was like one time. It was a party thing. Like, Molly is more of a party themed drug.
So I had Molly is called Happy Pill. So when you had Molly, and the feeling you just described now, is it the same feeling you have when you have Molly? So crack is worse than Molly.
Crack is worse than anything. I don't know about heroin because I've never been there, but like, crack is worse than anything.
Okay, so what made you think it was the right time to stop?
Wow.
So I don't smoke, yeah. But was crack like a smoke also, or is that something you sniff in? Yeah, okay, great.
Cocaine, but it's crystalline.
Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah,
like the meth one, yeah.
Something like that, but it's not meth.
Okay.
It's different. It's worse than meth.
Oh, okay.
So
from Breaking Bad, so that's at
yeah,
least I know meth.
It's
from
worse
Breaking
than
Bad,
meth. Like, crack is more of cocaine. It's cocaine from the coca plant,
Okay.
actually. So when you smoke stuff like that, like, meth is different. The high lasts longer.
All right, let's move on,
Never
yeah,
been
because we've got a lot to cover on this episode. Tell me, at what point did you stop smoking crack, and what made you stop?
So at every point in my life, I was smoking crack. Like, I hated it because at first the feeling was exhilarating, but then over time, I realized it was taking more from me than it was giving. I would be on the internet. In fact, I was not working anymore. I was not even able to sell weed anymore as a blog. Like, so I'd rather gamble. And trust me, I will go on the internet and tell myself that
So the
I want to
crack
make
brought
I want
the
to make
worst in
money.
you, and then
Yeah.
start gambling.
Yeah, I'm like, I want to make money off this, not because I want to better myself, but because I want to go and buy 1 gram of crack and I want to buy stem. You get? So I'm telling you,
So what's them again?
stem is like what you used to smoke the crack. So like, and you can't use it twice. Once you use it, it's done. You have to get
have
a
to
new-
buy another
yeah.
one.
So, and it's really expensive. A gram is like 15,000, 10,000. Yeah, you get. So like, you know how small a gram is. So then, like, when you want to get stuff like that, when you are not working, what do? You resort to other things.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been the person that is willing to steal or to do stupid stuff. So I'd rather gamble. And trust me, then I would gamble from morning till 4 in the evening, and I'll be making money like 20k, 30k just to buy crack.
Mm.
And then I'll get my crack. I'll come back home. I'll get high. While I'm high, it makes me feel like everything is all right. I'll be good. But then immediately the high passes out, I get pissed off. I'll break my stem. I'll be angry. I'll tell God, Lord, I'm tired. I don't want to do this thing again. I'll throw it away and I'll tell myself I'll never do this again.
And the
Trust
next
me,
day
I
you
get
go back
money
to
the
it.
next day. I'm back at it.
I mean, so that's the addiction part here. So
That's the addiction part.
we've got less than 4 more minutes before we introduce our next guest on the show. How did you get over the addiction itself?
How I got over the addiction was basically me seeing myself around people I love, because there's one thing about depression and addiction. It drives you away from people that actually love you, because when a lot of people are telling you the truth at the same time, you block them out.
Before I hand over to Ansem, I'm going to ask you one last question from my own side, which would be, how long have you been clean?
Wow, I've been clean for like 3 years now.
Off crack?
Yes.
How about off weed?
Off weed, 10 months.
10 months. So you're saying now that you're totally clean?
I'm totally clean. Except you count whiskey. I take whiskey though.
I mean, I'm having whiskey anyway, so I don't think that counts. Ansem, over to you.
Quite interesting. So, let me ask you a question, right? If you were to look back at yourself 10 months ago, right, seeing how far you've come without that addiction, what would be your best story, or what would be your best narrative to yourself to inspire yourself to get out of it as fast as possible?
So I realized that weed, marijuana, or any substance, whatever it is like trying to shy away from the realities that you face. You get, like, no offense to weed smokers or whatever they do, because I'm still like 10 months out of it, so I can't judge anybody.
Yep.
But I feel like there's this greater power that you gain when you realize that you are totally in control of yourself. I have friends back then that would tell me when I'm pissed off or they're pissed off, they would be like, guy, let me just hit the blunt and I'll just be done with this. And truly, when they hit the blunt, they're not pissed off with you again. They just go about their life. They don't care. But like, there's a greater power you feel when
It feels like a spirit is controlling it.
you get. But there's a greater power you feel when you don't have to depend on that for you to beat your aggression. You understand? Like, and that's what I've been going through. Because then, for me to concentrate on something, I used to write, like, and for me to concentrate on anything at all, once I hit the blunt, I'll concentrate on just that thing. If it likes, it takes me 10 hours. I'll be on that thing till I'm done. But ever since I stopped, concentration became harder. But now I realize I can do it myself. I think it's a more lasting effect than something that needed a medium for me to get there. Yeah, that's one thing I appreciate myself.
Thank you, David, for joining us today. I'm going to bring in our next guest, who's going to be talking about the mental health part and the depression that leads to this. So, thank you, David. It was nice having you on the show, and thanks for telling your story. I'm sure you've motivated one or two people. And some any last word for David?
Well done.
You've done well.
It's your struggle, it's your story, and you're doing well. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David.
You're welcome.
Still on the topic depression and addiction, once again we've got the beautiful Queen in the house.
Hello.
Hi, Queen.
Hello.
If you remember Queen from the previous episode, she shared her divorce story, and she's back again because she's a mental health coach and she's also a tech lawyer, and that's why we have her back on the show. Queen, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right, great. So we're just going to go straight into the conversation. So David earlier shared his addiction story. One, what do you think? What do you think? I mean, yeah, shared it from his own story, from his own angle, but being an expert in this field, what are the things that could lead to things like this?
Okay, thank you.
I need to speak to the mic and I need to speak up.
Thank you so much. So basically, David's story is actually most people's stories. So it was just one of the coping mechanism. So when people go through trauma or mental health issues, depression, they find different ways to cope. Because when you have a problem, you try to solve it. So there are different ways people try to cope with their issues. And some people go into, the most common ones are always addictions. So you want to forget your problem. Alcohol consumption, excess consumption of it, drugs. Some people could be sex. Some people could just be partying. there are different things. Some people just want to go spiritual and go to God.
Some
And
people food.
Yeah, some people food, yeah, and they add so much weight, yeah. So people they are coping with the trauma. So David's story was just like every other person's story, where he found solace in taking drugs. He started
Drugs,
with
yeah.
weed, and of course the weed wasn't giving him the feel. It was just normal, and he needed something higher to feel better. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. So, if David's story was, if it was a coping mechanism for him, in your line of duty, what do you think people go through that leads them into such states most times? I mean, the mental health part. That's
Yeah.
how I really want to hear.
Okay, so basically, what would push someone into drugs? Some people, we won't say everybody get into drugs. It always has to do with mental health.
I mean, I'm going to refuse the fact that
Yeah.
everybody gets into drug with peer pressure, because if it's by virtue of that, I should be a junkie by now. I should be. I mean, like, growing up, I had so many friends that did drugs, proper drugs. I'm not even talking about weed and none of that, but I felt there was no reason. I've tried weed. Yeah, I've tried. I mean, I think loud is also weed. Yeah, so I've tried all variant of weed, but I've never gone to David's level of crack and all those things. But then I felt there was nothing to this. There was no satisfaction. People say, "Oh, when they smoke this one, they get high." Yeah, I don't know what that means. So, but from your own line of duty, what do you think? What have you experienced that lead people into this situation most times?
Yeah, the first reason will always be peer pressure, because like that's like if you go through school,
Yeah,
most of your mates always smoke for some unknown reasons. You know, when you're growing up as an adolescent and teenager, you keep discovering yourself. So in that self-discovery, they just find out like, oh, I want to smoke to feel like a baddie, or I want to smoke because people smoke. You don't even know why you want to do it. So sometimes it could just be peer pressure, and then you go somewhere. I remember when I was in uni, people do the same thing and I'm not part of them, and I don't feel like I'm up to them because it discriminates you.
yeah.
So when you go for parties, remember, sometimes you see cocaine or whatever, and you see drugs, and if you don't take it, you're looked down upon, like,
Yeah,
oh,
like you're missing.
Yeah, you're missing. So personally, I've always had, I really, I didn't want to indulge in that, so I don't even attend such parties. Then the second reason could be like coping mechanism,
Yeah,
which is actually what's happening. And this starts from a very young, like from young children, because drugs is not even adults alone that take it. It starts from kids.
no.
So most children who are in unstable homes where their parents are always fighting, you know, because they get to school, sometimes the coping mechanism,
Yeah,
they start indulging, they meet friends in school, and they want to forget the pain. Coming back home every day, your dad is beating your mom is beating your dad, your parents are neglecting you. They start coping with drugs.
I'm going to show my next question to Ansem. Yeah. So now Ansem is a teacher and is also a counselor, and he does that professionally. Ansem, I'm going to just ask you this: that how do you think people with depression should? How do you think depression can be dealt with? One, two. Again, is how do you think? How do people identify that they are depressed? See, this is it. Yeah. When you come to, I might be into something and I don't know that I'm into that thing. I might not know I'm depressed. But what are the signs to watch out for to say, oh, this might be, it might not necessarily be depression, but this might be signs of depression? Answer, what's your take?
I would say that the first one would be how to identify, then I'll go to maybe how to cope or how to come out of it, not necessarily cope. Number one would be you need to hear. Sometimes you're so into it that you don't know you're in it. But when you begin to hear people's story, when you begin to hear what people are going through, and they name it as this is depression, right? You begin to hear and understand what you're going through. It's like a scripture that says faith comes by hearing and hearing, right?
Yeah.
The same way, knowledge, once you hear, you are able to put a name to it. Say, oh, really? This was what I was going through, and I just did not even know I was going through this phase. Number two way of knowing if you're really going through depression is, there are different ways. When it's chronic, there is isolation, there is that feeling of helplessness. I can't really help myself to go through this.
Yeah.
There's that feeling of emptiness, not helplessness. Now you're empty.
Yeah.
Right? You can't. It's not that you're sad. It's not about. Sometimes people think it's just being sad. It's not just being sad that leads to depression. It can be a way to go to depression, right? But when you are depressed, it's beyond you just being sad. It's the fact that you just feel empty at that moment. You can't go forward, you can't go backward. You're just in that state of temporal non-existence,
Yeah.
right? And so it's varies for different people, right? How can you begin to work out of that?
And so before you go into that, can I ask you this one? Before you go into the next question I asked, I'm sorry to
Okay.
interrupt on this one. So again, does your financial status, can it be a major source of depression? So this is why I'm asking this question. A lot of guys in their mid-30s, early 30s, mid-30s, about early 40s, they feel, oh, I should be this is my prime stage, and I'm already beginning to lose the capacity to make money. But it's already looking as if I'm not making. I don't want to be $5 million that I'm in my 65 years before I became popular, or before I started making money. Do you think being unhappy about the fact that you're unable to make money is the same thing as depression?
Okay, what I would say is
Because a lot of times, sorry again, a lot of time people confuse the fact that they are unhappy. They confuse it for depression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree that a lot of people confuse that, but what I would say is depression is like a gun, right? And anyone can pull the trigger. Both a child, an adult, anyone can pull the trigger. Your depression can start from as mild as you being single to as intense as you being broke. Anything can pull that trigger, right? It can even be as little as, hey, I witnessed someone else get hurt, not you. I've seen someone who got depressed because she watched her friend get hurt.
That's another angle, you know.
Yes, so it can be anything pulling that trigger, but the thing is, once the gun is loaded and you pull that trigger, you go that way. So it's more of what is being is the gun loaded, right? And so anything can really lead to depression. It can be from your finances, and it starts as little as, hey, I'm not happy, right? And then after a while, from I'm not happy, I can't do anything about it, I'm frustrated. I've even seen people that are very progressive in life and they are still depressed because of stress, anxiety, and they didn't deal with that for a long time.
Yep.
And then it went on into something else. So it can be anything pulling that trigger for you.
Okay, so you're going to talk about how to get out of depression.
So getting out of depression is I won't say there's an exact prescription to getting out of the depression, because people are unique in their way, right? And it depends on how deep they are into that state.
Yeah.
But what I would say helps when it comes to coming out of depression is the community helps when you're in a very healthy community. Something else that can help would be I shared it one time, naming how you really feel.
Yeah.
Naming it, owning your own story.
Owning your own story. I mean, David did that, David said he was depressed, and then he had to know at the point that he had to pull himself out. So.
Yeah, because a lot of people, when they are depressed, one of the major thing is they feel helpless, right? They feel they are not in charge of it. So
I really want us to have this conversation all night, but again, this is so I want to divert a bit here. Recently, Snapchat introduced something called AI. And then you have it on as your number one icon. I'm not really so good with Snapchat anyway. So for people that are so used to Snapchat, please correct me if I'm wrong. And basically, so I tried to ask AI a couple of questions recently, and in my head, I'm like, AI is meant to be from the angle of, I mean, we had an episode with Korede, the IT guy, that said the AI feature is meant for you to solve, basically answer any question and all of that. And I'm going to put this one to Queen, do you think technology solves depression?
Recently, they're trying to create AI that is going to help you talk to the AI, because some people don't have anyone to talk to. So this new
So the one you talk to in Martian,
so
I mean, Elon Musk made a new wife, And so you should consider buying one,
Yeah, so basically,
Buying what?
it's just a new invention. But I think it's good.
Hey, Joe.
I mean, shower will fling that away anyway. So.
Therapies are expensive, so sometimes, because especially during COVID,
you just hit my next question on the line, and that's why I asked the question is, what's your take on therapy? Because a lot of people feel like, I'm depressed. Why should I use my money to go and pay a therapist again? And what's your take on therapy?
Okay.
I honestly feel therapy in Nigeria, I don't know abroad though, because well, I've never even used a therapist before, anyways, I must confess. But from what I've gathered around, therapy is pretty much expensive. However, what's your take on therapy?
like you said, therapy is expensive. I've actually gone through therapy and I've seen a therapist. So I had a trauma that I experienced, like
Yeah.
I talked about in the last episode. So after that, how did I cope? Like now we keep talking about the depression. What is the solution? Like PH rightly said. So when you actually say you've identified the problem, I'm depressed, what do you need to do? So therapy is one place whereby they help you start by identifying the problem. So the pastors are meant to help you spiritually, and we have people to help you in different fields. So the therapists actually help you. They're psychotherapists with your brain and the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
But in Nigeria, when we talk about therapists or you need a psychiatrist, people think you're you're mad, like a mad person on the street.
Yeah,
So people shy away from it. And now because, like we said, it's expensive, they're not even easily accessible. I know I'm even coming up with a foundation now whereby I'm trying to help traumatized victims from bad relationships.
you heard that first on this show. She's coming up with the foundation.
Yes, I'm coming up
so
with a
please.
foundation. I'm actually
Exclusive
working on it.
from here.
So yes, so because I realize like they don't have enough help for people who are going through mental health, and it's going to become a serious pandemic very soon and lead to a lot of suicide in Nigeria, because a lot of people are going through a lot, and then we all term it spiritual. So most people go to their pastors. I'm not saying pastoral help is not good, but the pastors, except the pastor is a therapist, most of them are not trained to help you with things that has to do with the brain and the mind.
Yeah.
Because these are mental
agree.
issues. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we need to actually, that's why we're trying to do that. And the churches also should try and get their counseling unit and train them and get like professional in this field, because that is one way of rendering help. So therapy is really good.
All right, great. So we're going to round off for tonight. It's been an interesting one tonight. And then I told you guys the dynamics for this season is going to be very different. Anthem, from the pastoral care point of view, any last word for people that are depressed?
I would say just own your story. You can pull through. So just own your story and just own your story and begin to walk out of that state. You can do it, but you need to seek the right help, right? Seeking the right help is really critical, because sometimes you can open up to yourself to
The wrong person.
not just the wrong person. I know someone who opened herself up to someone that was supposed to help, and then the person just what was the word now? Exploited that situation.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
mean,
so-
the famous singer in Nigeria, Mali, he said he visited his therapist and it was going well until he slept with the therapist.
so
and then it went south.
yeah.
All right, Queen, any last word for people that are depressed from the professional angle of someone that is a mental health advocate here?
So basically, even start from all the talk we are doing, creating a lot of awareness, even start feeling empty, because PH rightly said, depression is not sadness. You can be sad, I don't have money, or my food finished, or my gas finished. But depression is this form of emptiness where you feel like you feel so helpless. You feel like nothing is working around you. You just don't want to leave your house. Even start having that feeling, you need to seek help. And I know that therapy is very expensive. So what are we going to do? So you need to find avenues to reach out. Be careful who you talk to, because some people can use your story and actually make it worse.
Yeah,
Some people can exploit you.
Yeah.
Some people can play with your vulnerability and even use you and cause more depression. So you have to find a way to come to people who can
Yeah.
actually help you.
All right. Thank you very much, guys, for coming on the show. We're done
Thank
for
you.
this episode. Thank you guys for watching tonight. I want to say, please share. You can be helping someone. Like and comment. Then subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and see you next episode.
Thank
Booyah.
you.